Coming up, mourners visit a makeshift altar to pay their respects to those who died in the Itaewon crowd crush. Our team is there. President Yoon visits a memorial at a station near the site of the tragic incident. He promises a speedy and intensive inquiry into all aspects and urges fundamental efforts from the government to bolster prevention mechanisms. Plus, North Korea warns it will respond with powerful actions if Seoul and Washington attempt to use armed forces against the regime. It also criticized the two allies' joint air drills, calling them aggressive and provocative. Hello and welcome to New Day in Arirang. South Korea's period of national mourning continues, with the country still steeped in sorrow. Mourners are also continuing to flock to memorial altars to pay their respects to the deceased. For more, we have our reporter Song Yujin joining us live from one of the altars. Yujin.
Well, hello, Toyon. I'm out at Seoul Plaza in front of City Hall. We're only a 15-minute drive from Itaewon, where Saturday night's tragedy struck. Now, our team, we've been out here since early morning, even before the altar opened. And since then, we've been seeing mourners streaming in, laying down flowers and leaving messages of condolences. Now, this altar, it was set up by the city government 3 days ago and will run from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day until Saturday, which is the last day of the week-long national mourning period. And also, a lot of people paid a visit today, as I mentioned before, including Seoul City Mayor Oh Se-hoon, who paid a visit here on his way to work. Now, as I mentioned before, as of yesterday at 5 p.m., 12,225 people had visited here to say their last goodbyes to those who died, and almost 30,000 visitors flocked to other memorial sites set up in 25 autonomous districts of Seoul, including the one at Noksapyeong Station that's very close to Itaewon.
And Yujin, do we have any updates on the number of casualties?
Well, we don't have any updates from yesterday. Data from the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters show that as of 6 a.m. today, the death toll stands at 156. 130 have been identified as Koreans and 26 non-Koreans. The funeral of 68 people have taken place, and the number of deaths remain unchanged after a Korean woman in her 20s was the latest victim to be reported earlier yesterday. And at least 157 people were listed as being injured, and out of them, 121 have been discharged from hospital after receiving treatment. But still, there are 33 reportedly still in critical condition. That's all I have for now, but I'll be back in our later newscast at 11 a.m. Back to you, Toyan.
Thank you, Eugene. South Korea is moving to calm public outrage over a crowd crush over the weekend that killed more than 150 people. President Yoon is urging fundamental efforts from his government to bolster prevention mechanisms while grieving himself. He visited one of the memorial altars set up across the nation for the second day on Tuesday. Our editor-in-chief Moon Gun-young reports.
The Seoul Halloween crowd crush that led to the death of so many was a wake-up call for South Korea on its lack of comprehensive research and crowd management. Acknowledging the shortcoming, President Yoon called for tough new safety measures to prevent similar disasters during a weekly cabinet meeting on Tuesday.
드론 등 첨단 디지털 역량을 적극 활용해서 크라우드 매니지먼트 기술을 개발하고 이번 대형 참사가 발생한 이면 도로뿐만이 아니라 군중이 운집하는 경기장, 공연장 등에 대해서도 확실한 인파 관리 안전 대책을 세워야 합니다.
The president promised a speedy and intensive inquiry on all aspects of the night to get to the bottom of the accident and a sweeping review of the nation's safety management system with related ministers and experts. The South Korean leader also thanked world leaders for their heartfelt condolences over the Halloween crowd crush.
바이든 미국 대통령, 기시다 일본 총리, 시진핑 중국 주석 등 세계 각국 정상들이 깊은 애도의 뜻을 보내주셨습니다. 세계 각국 정상과 국민들께서 보여주신 따뜻한 위로에 대해 국민을 대표해서 깊이 감사드립니다.
And pledged to fully assist all victims regardless of nationality. After the meeting, President Yoon visited a special memorial altar and a makeshift one set up in Seoul's Itaewon neighborhood near the site of the deadly accident with members of his cabinet and top office aides. Placing a single white chrysanthemum, paying tribute to the young victims of the tragic accident, the South Korean leader wrote in the Book of Condolence the profound sadness he feels and his resolve to never allow such tragic accident from happening again. 문건영, Arirang News.
Now, the government is on standby and actively reaching out to the families of the foreign victims. Authorities are working to ensure they can get the help they need when they come to Seoul. Kim Da-mi brings the updates.
Seoul plans to provide the bereaved families of the foreign victims on the Itaewon incident with all the help they need when they arrive in South Korea. Visas for them will be issued immediately on arrival at Incheon International Airport.
The families of the deceased have been arriving since Monday. We plan to show them every reasonable courtesy by respecting and listening to their wishes as much as possible.
This includes assigning a South Korean government official to work with each of the foreign victims' families. As with the Korean victims, 50 million won, or roughly $10,000 will be provided for funeral costs and another $14,000 for living expenses. They can also file a request with Yongsan-gu District for up to $50 a night for accommodation. According to an official from the Foreign Ministry, it's also working with related agencies to take care of their flights to South Korea. Reports say the families have been reluctant to publicly share their funeral arrangements because customs all vary by culture. A total of 26 foreigners died in the tragedy, and one is still being treated at a local hospital. The Foreign Ministry is reportedly in talks with related agencies to pay for the medical expenses of those who were injured and/or hospitalized. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Now, the weekend's crowd crush tragedy has put a huge emotional toll on people in this country, not only for those that were there, but also those who followed events on the news or social media. Today, we look at what society can do to protect those affected from further trauma and help them recover from the emotional scars. We have Professor Seo Soo-yeon from Seongshin Women's University's Department of Psychology joining us from Palo Alto. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, how are you?
First, let's focus on the survivors and witnesses after a traumatic event like this. At what point do we know that they need professional help? I mean, for a few days, it's normal for anyone to experience kind of the aftermath of trauma, but they need at one point a professional help.
Well, I don't think there's anyone who has seen this news that hasn't really been affected negatively. However, if you feel that you're experiencing nightmares or flashbacks, or you feel you find yourself becoming more sad and isolated, feeling difficulty, feeling joy, or blaming yourself or others because of the event, having difficulty sleeping, or feeling more irritable than normal. And if these symptoms are getting in the way of your daily life, you should definitely think about seeking professional help. Now, even if you're unsure, you should definitely go talk to a professional, and they should be able to assess whether you need further help. And if these symptoms don't go away or persist for over a month, you should definitely go and seek professional help as well.
So the country needs to give people enough time to recover from the trauma they're dealing with. In the meantime, what can society, including people without training in this area like myself, do to make sure friends and loved ones recover from this experience?
Well, it's a very sad time for everyone, and it's very easy at a time like this to point the finger at victims and blame them for what happened. In psychology, there's a phenomenon called the just world hypothesis, which means that most people have this worldview that bad things happen to those who deserve it. And this is really stemming from fear that you're afraid that something bad might happen to you too. So we have to acknowledge that we're all afraid, and it's a very important time for the community to really come together and heal together. Pointing fingers and victim blaming is very unproductive at this time. And there's a lot of positive stories that have emerged where Good Samaritan strangers have helped those in need. And I hope everyone can really come together as a community and reach out both emotionally and physically to those who need it at this difficult time.
Right, and it's an effort that we need to make as a community, definitely. But the footage from the scene spread quickly online, and even those who only watched the event from their devices far removed from the actual location have been affected. What do you recommend for those emotionally distressed from being exposed to these videos?
Well, it's not uncommon for these disturbing images to traumatize you. And as I mentioned before, if you're experiencing these traumatic symptoms, even if you weren't directly involved with the event, it's a good idea to get support or even talk to a mental health professional about things that you're struggling with. They may bring up some deep-seated issues, or they may bring up a lot of fear. And I think that's a very normal response. There's a lot of institutions that are currently providing free mental health services at this time. For example, the Korean Psychological Association or the Korean Clinical Psychological Association are both providing professional help for those in need. So definitely utilize these services, reach out to your social support network, and then also make sure that you set aside some time to take care of your own mental health.
Right, Professor, thank you so much for your insights, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Now, this just in. North Korea on Wednesday fired a ballistic missile toward the East Sea, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. South Korea is currently analyzing the range and speed of the missiles. We will be updating you as more details come out. So we continue to shift focus to North Korea. The North has threatened to unleash a powerful response if Seoul and Washington attempt to use armed force against the regime. It also criticized the two allies' joint air drills, calling them, quote, aggressive and provocative. Kim Yo-sun has the details.
A senior North Korean government official has warned that South Korea and the U.S. will have to pay the most horrific price in history if they attempt to use military force against Pyongyang. That's according to the North state-run news agency on Tuesday, reporting remarks made by Park Jung-chun, secretary of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea. He also added that it would be a big mistake to accept this as a threat warning only. Regarding the ongoing aerial drills between Seoul and Washington, the North Korean officials said they are aggressive and provocative, adding that they are preparations for a possible invasion of the North. North Korea's foreign ministry also said in a statement Tuesday that the regime will pursue more powerful follow-up measures if the U.S. continues with its grave military provocations. The statement also called for the U.S. to immediately halt its useless and ineffective war exercises. To this, White House National Security Council spokeswoman Adrienne Watson said that the joint exercises are, quote, part of an annual routine training schedule. The drills, she said, are aimed at bolstering defense ties between the two allies. Watson further added that Washington has made clear that it has no hostile intent towards the regime. The allies this week started their joint air drills known as Vigilant Storm, which involves over 200 aircraft to hone their wartime capabilities. The drills last until Friday. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Washington remains highly concerned about a potential North Korean nuclear test, highlighting that the regime may conduct its 7th nuclear test, quote, at any time. White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, however, added during a telephonic press briefing on Tuesday that it is difficult to predict exactly when the regime might conduct a test. The remarks were made in answer to a question on whether the North could go ahead with a nuclear test during the G20 summit slated to be held in Bali in mid-November. Meanwhile, Seoul officials predict that any such test by the regime will likely take place before the U.S. midterm elections next Tuesday. The World Health Organization on Tuesday said that monkeypox continues to represent a global health emergency. The UN agency said that the outbreak is still a public health emergency of international concern, which is the organization's highest level of alert. That designation is designed to encourage a coordinated international response and motivate collaboration on the development and sharing of vaccines and treatments. The WHO said one of the reasons for the current alert level is ongoing transmission in some regions and a lack of equitable access to diagnostics, antivirals, and vaccines. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus declared the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency of international concern in July. For the first time in 2 years, South Korea's exports declined. Data from the Trade Ministry shows the country has posted a trade deficit for 7 months in a row, the longest streak since the '97 Asian financial crisis. Outbound shipments in October came to around $52.5 billion, down 5.7% on year. Exports were outpaced by imports, which came to around $59 billion, an on-year spike of 9.9%. The monthly deficit rose to $6.7 billion. The ministry believes the key contributing factors include the Ukrainian war and rate hikes in major economies. South Korea is seeking personnel management innovation through cooperation with the ASEAN nations. The same goes for ASEAN nations too, as officials from the region gather in Korea's administrative city of Sejong to address those issues. Our Yoon Jung-min sat down with Korea's personnel management minister for an in-depth look.
Putting together an ASEAN-wide conference on personnel management in the public sector, administrators and governors from South Korea's neighbors take great interest in learning about Korea's IT-based personnel management systems, such as Korea Online e-procurement system, Online Cyber Examination Center, and HR database that are run by the Personnel Management Ministry.
They're interested in Korea's digital-based personnel management system as it's appreciated overseas. Through this conference, we will share in detail information about this system as foreign officials take great interest in it.
Minister Kim Seung-ho, who is now some 6 months into taking office but no stranger to personnel management, is wishing to bring change to the Korean public servant management system.
Through innovation in the public sector, public servants become more willing to work and it leads to higher productivity and efficiency. For example, Singapore has a flexible working system contributing to a happier work environment and higher efficiency. South Korea can benchmark this system to raise productivity and offer better service to its people.
Differences in a culture or system could be a setback, says Mr. Kim, which he thinks can be narrowed through active discussions, exchanges, and networking. Key issues related to personnel management were addressed at this year's ASEAN +3 conference on public sector human resource management, held in South Korea's administrative city of Sejong on Tuesday, hoping for further cooperation leading up to the upcoming ASEAN-related summits.
I hope for robust cooperation among the ASEAN +3 nations and a positive ripple effect for the ASEAN Summit and the ASEAN +3 Summit as well.
Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning, Do-yeon.
Let's start in Brazil, where outgoing President Bolsonaro has spoken for the first time since his election defeat.
Well, that is right. Giving a short speech in the Brazilian capital of Brasilia on Tuesday, Bolsonaro said he would continue to fulfill all the commandments of Brazil's constitution. However, he stopped short of conceding election defeat. Now, the retired military general has been silent ever since he was beaten by former President Lula da Silva in Sunday's national vote, a victory some of Bolsonaro's allies have acknowledged. But Bolsonaro's speech does indicate that he's willing to engage in a peaceful transfer of power. Meanwhile, supporters of Bolsonaro have been protesting by blocking roads, and this throughout the country since Sunday. 267 roads are being occupied by cars and trucks, cutting off transport routes for fuel, grains, and meat. Now, staying in politics, Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is likely to edge a narrow win in Israel's fifth election in 4 years. This according to 3 separate exit polls after voting officially ended on Tuesday local time. Of the 120-seat Israeli parliament, polls show that Netanyahu's right-wing bloc will take a majority with 62 or 61 seats. If officially confirmed, Netanyahu could form a parliament and be able to pass laws. It would mark a political comeback for the former prime minister, who had previously served in the position for 12 years, up until 2021. Now, Twitter users wanting to keep their blue tick indicating their account's verified status will need to shell out $8 per month. This is according to Elon Musk on Tuesday, who plans to charge the amount for Twitter subscription service Twitter Blue. He also promised that anyone subscribing to the service can get the blue tick. The move follows Musk's $44 billion takeover of Twitter on Friday. Previously, verification was given to accounts at threat of impersonation. The Tesla CEO has defended his plan, saying it is essential to defeat spam and scams. It is also part of broader efforts to reduce the social media platform's reliance on advertising. And then our final story, same-sex couples across Tokyo can now receive certificates proving their partnership. Despite not having the same legal rights as marriage, the status means LGBTQ partners can get the same treatment for housing, health and welfare and other public services. It follows a pioneering step in 2015 by Tokyo's Shibuya district to introduce the status, which since spread to other parts of the capital. Japan still does not recognize legal marriage between same-sex couples, but it has grown more inclusive in recent years. A 2021 survey by a local broadcaster showed that 57% of the public were in favor of gay marriage, with only 37% opposed.
Good morning. It's a much colder start to the day. Morning temperatures in the capital are about 5 degrees lower than the same time yesterday. Taegwallyeong and mountainous regions are seeing a sub-zero morning with frost and ice. Later, highs will hike to similar ranges to yesterday under sunnier skies. Western regions were covered with a mix of dust and mist yesterday, but today air quality has improved for all. But those in southern parts of the country and Jeju will have dust conditions before it clears late in the afternoon. Inland regions are covered with dense fog this morning, so please drive safely. Afternoon highs in most of the south will be in the 20s, Daegu topping out at 21 degrees, Busan at 23 degrees. Sunnier skies expected nationwide today. Then brace for much colder air that's forecast to sweep in tomorrow afternoon, and on Friday morning, the low in Seoul will go as low as 0 degrees, while the air will only get drier. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
Now, as we broke just moments ago, North Korea on Wednesday fired a ballistic missile toward the East Sea, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. South Korea is currently analyzing the range and speed of the missile. Arirang News will be back at 11 a.m. to have more details for you. For now, that does it for New Day at Arirang. Goodbye.